Well, I'm Tanya June Moore, and I have the pleasure of being here with Orla and Terry George. And for those of you out in the Webiverse that don't know these people, I am absolutely certain you will know Hotel Rwanda, In the Name of the Father, Hearts War, Resurrection Road. The list goes on and on. Congratulations on all of your accomplishments. Welcome to Sedona.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
Is this your first time?
I've been here before, but the first time at the festival. And
I was here last year, yeah. And actually Terry's film Standoff played last year, yeah, so that was nice.
So is this your first day in Sedona, or?
yeah, I got in last night. Yeah, yeah, same.
We just got in last night. We showed The Shore last year as well. And then, but we've come here for holidays, it's such a great place.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
you're familiar with all this
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah.
energy that we have around
Yeah.
here, right?
Absolutely.
It's great.
So I want to open up by saying thank you for giving films that really have meaning and will stand the test of time. And I think that that's rare, because I remember the first time I watched Hotel Rwanda. I was in high school, right at the end of my high school career when all of that happened. And when you wrote that script,
Yeah.
please, can you go into the process of how, it was difficult to watch.
Yeah, well, at the time, around that time, I was looking to write something about Africa, Central Africa or West Africa, because I'd watched some of those crazy wars, the Sierra Leone, Liberia, and the boy soldiers and so forth, and I just felt the need. I mean, nobody was writing about it, and there was reasonable coverage in the press, but the West was completely avoiding it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'd started off to write a script, which strangely ended up very similar to Blood Diamond, but even though there was no connection. But in the middle of doing that, my agent sent me a script by Keir Pearson, which had the story of the Michelin. It was bigger than that. It was trying to tell the whole genocide story, but the story of the Michelin Hotel, and Paul Rusesabagina was in the middle of it. And as soon as I read that, I said, "This is the film I have to do." And at the time, HBO and Danny Glover and so forth were flirting with it, but I flew to Belgium. I met Paul Rusesabagina, who at that time was driving a taxi, and we sat down. I talked to him more, and I wrote him a check. And then we went on this kind of amazing journey where we visited, Orla and I and a cameraman, along with Paul and his wife, went back for the first time, researched his story, went around several of the studios, and they all said, "Well, if you get Denzel, we'll give you the money." And I kind of said, "Well, if I get Denzel, I don't need the money from you." And but there was Denzel or Will Smith, of course, but I'd already met Don Cheadle, and he was I wrote the script, rewrote it with Keir, with him in mind, and I kind of told Don, "This is you, but in order to get it made, if I have to go with these bigger names, that's the," and he was familiar with the reality of it. Luckily, we took on board, our producer came as a partner with me, Alex Ho, who was a veteran producer with Michael Mann and Oliver Stone, and he started looking for independent money, and he was really the driving force who managed to raise the money from Canada, from Italy, from the UK, with a very dodgy tax fund that subsequently fell apart just as we were shooting, and the South African government were big contributors. So that was the genesis of it. It was like 2 years of, which in movie making terms is not that long.
Right.
Dawn was already in. I worked with Joaquin Phoenix on Ladder 49, doing the rewrite of that, and he'd become a friend, and he agreed to do it for nothing, pretty much. We had to give him something for the guild, but Nick Nolte came on board and Sophie Okonedo. So we had a great cast, and then a great cast of South African actors mostly. And that was it. And we never expected, we know how, we thought, okay, we'll go to festivals, we'll see what happens, and who knows. And then we went to Toronto first and had an amazing premiere there and won the festival.
Yes.
And then we were on the road, on the kind of Oscar road.
And with a story like this, it's very much in line with what's going on in Sudan and what's continuing to happen in Sudan. I mean,
Yeah.
do you feel like there might be a need for that story to be told in the same form and fashion?
Yeah, I do, but I feel that there are people out there trying to, there's been different attempts at,
And a Sudan movie.
yeah, Jerry Butler did one that, was a noble attempt, and you never know. And it was Mark Foster, who I respect a lot. I have a hope. I want to do a sort of MASH set in a refugee camp with young NGO workers. And I've met them around the world, not just in Rwanda, but in East Timor when I was trying to do a project there, and in Sarajevo when they'd come back from places, and there's a lot of Irish. We've kind of graduated from nuns and priests to these very crazy hippie type NGO kids, and they're much more interesting, and so I'd like to do that, but it's just an idea and an aspiration,
Ah, that's where the best ones come from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how is it working together?
Great, yeah, no, great, and nice. I mean, it was nice showing the shore. I hadn't seen Hotel Rwanda in a while, and showing the shore is always great. And there's a line that kind of runs between them in a lot of ways about that sort of post-colonial identity and the kind of long impact it's had for people. It's still going on in Ireland now, still going on in Rwanda, going on in Sudan, and so. Yes, it's definitely, I hope that we see more things that kind of deal with that, because media is such a way of changing that idea of what identity is. And when we took the shore back to Northern Ireland, it's really nice to take the shore around because it's about reconciliation, and people know quite a lot about the Troubles, but they know very little a lot of times about what's gone on since then, and there's a real endeavor in Northern Ireland to create peace, and the conflict is always very dramatic and gets sort of world coverage, and the sort of day-to-day of how do people meet neighbors that they were isolated from and rebuild those bridges, it can seem less dramatic. And so it's really nice because we go back to Northern Ireland a lot, and it feels in some ways like that's what you sort of want to be part of, is that new part of like, how do you create an identity and how does culture, you sort of start to unite people with ideas that they have bonds together, that it's not just one history.
I was in Ireland right after the
The
unification,
yeah,
I guess
yeah.
is the best word, and you could feel that.
Mm-hmm.
But you could also feel the peace that was...
Yeah, but it's tenuous, there's still a lot of the old sectarian tensions there, and it's frail, and it's probably it's a generational thing. But Orla has another project that she's going to shoot on we have a house there with a reasonable chunk of land where we shot the shore, and she's already written another script set there.
Yeah.
So we've like the perfect location, and I don't mind getting the house trashed occasionally,
So can you give us a little blip of what it's about?
Yeah, that project I'm doing with the very lucky to say the Sundance Writers Institute, which is amazing, and so it's somewhat similar to The Shore. It's about a girl going back with her father, and there's a ghost story in the town, and the father's arrested for a crime during the Troubles, and so it's about this American girl's sort of investigation, trying to prove his innocence, and also kind of realizing this history of communal violence that's right there, because I just thought it was interesting, sort of Winter's Bone like in tone, because it's just so interesting that like even here in America, a lot of people's parents in the 60s, or just people who are, it's like this immigrant country, you're kind of connected, or even, the children of soldiers who served in Iraq, kind of your life is influenced by experiences that someone else had in another country, and it's that sort of journey of someone going back and putting together the pieces of their family history that are tied into politics was interesting to me. And I think that just also the place is incredibly beautiful in Northern Ireland, and yet in towns like that, in places like Armagh, there had been, really a long history of oppression and violence, and so there's a funny disconnect when you go somewhere that's like Rwanda is incredibly beautiful, and it's just like, how did this happen here? That's kind of an eerie, an interesting thing to investigate.
And it's haunting.
Completely.
It follows you. I remember
Yeah,
that
it
feeling.
is. Yeah, it's strange because you associate genocide with gas chambers and horrible camps, and then you get to Rwanda and it's stunningly beautiful, and every single inch of the countryside is cultivated, to feed the population. And then you realize that this was about neighbor killing neighbor, which is even more frightening. But those are I try to go between these extremely dark subjects and something lighter, because I'm in my own cinematic choices. I'd rather come out the door laughing than crying.
On that subject, what is your favorite lighthearted film?
The Big Lebowski. No problem.
Without hesitation. I love that.
I could watch anytime. It's like The Godfather. Anytime it comes on, I'll just watch it. It's like the genius of it and all. And yeah.
It's fantastic. I would love to open up some questions for the gallery here.
Has Bill Clinton ever talked about Hotel Rwanda? Have you heard his response to
Yeah. I met him along with Cheadle, and he kind of shook my hand. And Bill's famous for having that Warren Beatty engage you, hold your hand, and suddenly you're in this Sedona-esque thing.
The bubble.
Spell.
And he said, it really moved me, and I really wanted to say, Bill, listen, you were responsible for the non-reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
But he's done such a mea culpa on it, and we were in like an award presenting thing, and I'm like, no, I can't do that. But no, I mean, I don't think he's claimed that it has been the motivation for all he's done in Africa, and probably so. And I don't think anybody's ever capable of admitting I was directly responsible for that.
Mm-hmm. So he's writing out.
Well, not for the genocide, obviously, but for the potential. Because I firmly believe, and military people have told me that the one division, well, not even one division, one regiment or whatever they call it, of soldiers, Western soldiers could have stopped that. But he was haunted by what had happened in Mogadishu before. The loss of 18 soldiers is what cost 1 million lives in Rwanda.
Why do you feel that sometimes we're able to intervene and other times, obviously East Timor and other things, we never really, but there's other times we're going to jump in. Why do you think?
Well, Timor actually, Bill, in the wake of Rwanda, Bill actually did act and sent in the UN and sent in Sergio Vieira de Mello, who I was trying to get a film project made on. So he I think, and in Kosovo, he certainly had the influence there to decide we're going to bomb the Serbs, and I think all of that was residual from Rwanda, but it's all judged on the temperament of the American public and the politics of it at the time, and I mean, one of the strange things is that with Darfur and Sudan, George Bush's record is better than what Clinton's was in Africa or even what Obama's is today, and who knows why that is. I know he watched Hotel Rwanda twice, but I'm not saying that's why it was. But so it varies on depending on the political temperature, and that's the problem. I mean, you need a UN, a really effective Western impetus UN force that can go in and put stop to things rather than have you know, 300 Poles and 400 Nepalese and 600 Jordanian troops in the Congo. Like, what's that about, you know? Anyway, that's just an ongoing discussion.
Do you feel that, and I get the sense that this movie was really a catalyst for our own presidents here to say, we need to really pay attention. I mean, we've always been billed as kind of the world police, and we really messed up. We messed this up.
Well, that's, we you know, like I said, when we finished it, we didn't expect. We thought, okay, we'll go to Toronto, and then who knows where, you know, try back in New York, whatever, and that will be it. And we, but it sort of caught the zeitgeist, and it became part of the, Amnesty International adopted it, and then it sort of went through the college and then the school system, and it became a rallying cry for what was going on in Darfur.
Yeah.
And then Cheadle and Clooney bonded together and made it a bigger issue. And I think the Darfur response, you know, we had something to do with that. Problem is that then, and fair play to Clooney and Dawn, they've kept going with it in Southern Sudan, but once it gets more complicated like that, where Southern Sudan was given independence and now they're fighting, you know, Americans have a very short and not that complex attention span for those things, and so it's like, okay, we don't know what's going on over there, and that's it.
So the scene in the movie that still resonates with me, that stands out, and it is the scene where he's driving in the dark.
He drives over the bodies, of course.
Yes. Whose decision? I mean, where did that come from? I mean, obviously, was that a true account, or was that
it
made
was
for...
just I needed. The first thing that I was like really focused on was that we have to try and get a PG-13 rating. So all the violence was either in long shots, like there was a piece of footage that became quite famous on the news where in a long shot you see Hutu militia macheting to death 2 women. But it's in a long shot, and at one point we were going to use that footage, and then I had a discussion with the cameraman who shot it, and he said, look, the people that's about are not alive to agree to this. And then I thought, this is going to become the news in the whole movie, that we have this snuff killing in this, you know. So we recreated it at a long distance, and then the thing with the van driving over the bodies, I needed a sense of the enormity of it without showing that, and I have this thing that sound is as important as the visual in movies, you know, that sometimes it's easy to prove. You take a horror movie and you turn down the sound and it's nothing, you know, simple as that. And so that was the thing, the sound of the crushing of the bodies, and then Dawn getting out and seeing what that was about. The great thing about that scene was that actually saved us from getting an R rating, because the MPAA gave us an R rating. Dawn and I went before this panel to appeal it. And the first thing, it's kind of like a prosecutorial thing where they have a representative of the MPA and she gets up and pleads their case. First thing she said was, we can't see a van driving over bodies in a PG-13 movie, and I'm like, bingo, I've got you. And I got up and said, you don't see a body driving over. You hear something that you perceive that to be, but you don't see it. And so the PG-13 rating that we got then became the reason that it could be put into schools and colleges and had that wider distribution. So that scene, it's particularly powerful because the audience is allowed to envisage what they don't see, and secondly, it's violence without you actually having to show it.
And that, please.
Oh, me? Oh, wonderful. Okay, so my question for you would be, what is like the creative process like working like in a father-daughter pair? Like what are the benefits to it? Like what are the pros and cons, or how is that experience?
Well, I mean, Terry was the creative on both things, so you know, like we're definitely we talk a lot about why he's doing it or what he wants to do and how it's gonna go, but I mean, it's sort of like he's very self-contained in terms of, you know, he has a very clear idea of what the vision is from the beginning, and so it's nice because like with The Shore, there was a lot of ability to like, you know, the casting was fun and like it was just there was a lot of fun on that movie because it was small. We didn't have to answer to anyone. With Hotel Rwanda, there was, I mean, one of the things that was going on was sort of an awareness that it needed to translate. But when the short film was there, it was freed from a lot of that because, first of all, it was going to take place in Ireland and it was sort of more accessible by its nature, and it was a comedy. But also, it was a short film. It was like, who thinks it's going to go on and have that kind of a run? So it was nice because there you have a lot of, sometimes like films actually have quite a lot of, even creative films have quite a lot of restraint because you're pretty aware of what your obstacles are and you need to continue to be aware of them. Like, what about this subject matter do we need to show in the most sort of creative way to do that? And I think Terry's always really good at like, I remember being on Hotel Rwanda and being like, wait, we should have more blood. Like, this is a bloody, and he was like, no, trust me. And I think it did. It was like, that's what stayed with people, and it also made the film accessible. So I think it's one of those things that, but it was fun. I mean, there's the actual procedure of making a film is so fun.
It's also good that, I mean, Orla's, even, she was born in Belfast, we came here when she was 1.5, so she has an American sensibility. And I even with Rwanda, Sheila and I had a key word, or I had a word for him, and that was Peoria. And the basic word meant, if they don't understand this in Peoria, we failed. And that, and even in that most complicated situation, I mean, just the name of the militia, the Interhamwe, was like, you know, and everybody, Paul Ruse Sabagina. So I'm always working on how do you make this as universal as possible. So that, and the same with The Shore, was what's, you know, bring an American sensibility into this situation. So I'm always interested in translation. How do people take it on board? What's the universality of it? And Orla is a good judge of that. And you know, it's great having your family there, and as I've often said, the only thing is that there's a diplomacy on the film set that you have to, that goes out the window really. With a family, that's, forget about that.
Well, thank you.
Anybody else?
I have, In the Name of the Father is one of my all-time favorites. Working with Daniel Day-Lewis, who is, to me, an actor's actor. Was he who you envisioned?
No, well, it was Jim Sheridan was the director. I was the writer on that with him, and Jim had already done My Left Foot with Daniel, so that was an automatic. When we wrote the script, he was the automatic first presentation, the person we were going to go to first, and thank God he said yes right away, because it turned that film. I remember we finished it up at the Chateau Marmont, and we sent it in till Universal on a Thursday, and on a Friday they told us, well, this is for our independent section. I forget the name of that, there's been so many since that. And we were like, okay, you know, it's going to be $4 million, $5 million, and can we do this? And that Friday, Last of the Mohicans opened. And by Monday it had made 20 million, and Universal, well, I think we can do this now, you know. So he made the movie. Any movie he's in, he's an unbelievable actor. You know, it's hard to say who's the best in the world, but Daniel's becomes the character and transcends it.
And when you see your words come to life, like literally come to life, go through the feeling of what that is.
Well, I mean, it's funny because I'm not that, you know, a lot of the time I'll say, the actor will be like, oh, this, and I said, just say what you want, you know. And ultimately they end up, they say several things, and then they end up back at what you wrote, because you've given them the freedom of that, and then they decide that. And there's moments, there's you know, the best line I've written is, these chips aren't bad, which was when Giuseppe Conlon, you know, Daniel is in the depths of despair, and Giuseppe Conlon goes out and gets the food and brings it back up to the cell, which they can't leave, and puts it down, and he's trying to find some joy, something to uplift his son, and, you know, the best he can do is French fries, but it just summed up his whole person, you know, and it's, you know, I mean, I think I'll Be Back is one of the great movie lines ever written. Just because, you know, he's coming back, all right? So, yeah, if you can catch that moment. And, you know, there's a moment in The Shore where the daughter, Carrie Condon, she just looks and says, "Oh, Dad," and bang, you know.
Yeah, she's
That's it, you know,
yeah, she's
and it's the actor who carries that. So, yeah, it's always fulfilling. But I'm not like a director who says you have to say this is exactly what you have to say. Say what you want and see what happens.
So for you, what's next in the works?
I just finished a big script on set during the Armenian genocide. I'm back to that subject again, but this is actually a really important world topic that hasn't been really ever covered fully in movies, and I'm hoping that'll get made. I have a TV show thing going, and I'd like to actually I have an idea for 2 other parts of The Shore to turn it into a feature. So, you know, and my refugee camp thing is an idea. It's always good to have ideas.
Keep them rolling.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add or impart on us?
No.
I
If
mean, we're
anybody's
just
any money,
honored.
give it to Orla for the next one.
I just have a real quick question. Going back to, you know, working with family, I'm on the cusp of shooting my thesis film for my for Sedona Film School.
Yeah.
And I've lived in town all my life, and I have a lot of friends and family that are close by. And one piece of advice people always say is like, don't work with family. I mean, it for
I
me.
don't.
We always work for.
Yeah.
Who's gonna like make the food at 4 a.m. and all
Yeah.
this? I mean, it's like it's so hard to. It's hard to make film, and when you have your family there and all that support, it just means that like, you know, everybody there has a lot of belief in you and the project, and I think it makes you work so much harder. I mean,
Yeah.
this thing that we shot over the summer, it made us work so much harder because it was like when everybody else is putting in the time for free, you kind of can't form it in. It's not like a job. It's like you have to.
Yeah,
You
as
have to
long as
show-
you're in charge. But yeah, look, you know, ask Jason Reitman that, or ask Susan about her daughter, and you know, you're in the business for better or worse. You know, I tried to persuade him not to get into this business that it's full of self-doubt and, you know, unemployment, stuff like that, but I wasn't very convincing.
Well, I think that the validation that you get from your family is so important. And if you're not with them,
Yeah, and the criticism as well, because it tends to be, you know, this is an industry where self-delusion or multiple collective delusion, you know, and we see it on the screen every weekend, how it ends up. So you need people who are honest, that you trust to say. That was my big thing with Sheridan when I was writing with him, and hope to do that again. We had a trust between each other where if one, you know, we divide up sections of the script, and if he said this is bullshit, that was it, it was. And I'd move on, and likewise with him. So the time that saves, and the kind of doubt in your head, and the harmony of that. So having a partner or a family that tells you the truth is important.
we get to see Hotel Rwanda on the big screen, which is
It's
you know,
always
yeah, it's so much better on the
instead
big
of it being
screen.
number 5 on Netflix, which is kind of good. It's satisfying as well,
Yeah.
but
And we get to see the shore.
yeah, on the big
Um,
screen even more important.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I just can't say thanks enough from
Yeah.
Sedona. We
Well,
just
thanks,
really
it's
great to
appreciate
be
you
here.
being here. And
It's one of those. I mean, there's film festivals that are people's film festivals where they go and see new movies and movies that they won't get the chance to see in cinema. And then there's Cannes and Toronto and Venice, which the ordinary people have no access to whatsoever. And this is much more gratifying. You know, you have an audience there. It tends to be, can't be the only chance for filmmakers to be in that dark room with an audience that they'll ever get now, because they're going to end up on VOD or Netflix or iTunes or whatever, and that's evolving as the various media that we serve. So your ego needs that dark room, believe me. And nobody can leave to make the tea or go to the bathroom. Well, they can go to the bathroom, but they can't switch off to watch the news or the sports. So it's, yeah, so thanks for being here. Thanks a lot.
no, thank you.